Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm sure you're all curious about what's going on with Ubisoft and where they're headed.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, so we're going to deep dive into that today. We've got this Tweaktone article, and it's saying that Ubisoft's headed towards privatization and dismantling in 2025.
Wow.
And then we've got a whole Reddit thread on or gaming reacting to all of this. And so
Interesting.
it's kind of like watching this slow motion train wreck, and
Yeah.
everyone's just wondering, is it going to, crash spectacularly, or is it going to be some kind of surprising revival?
I know exactly what you mean. And what's really interesting about this Tweaktown article is that it's not just some random speculation. They're quoting Joost van Dreunen.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that name.
Yeah, and you might remember him as the founder of Superdata.
Oh, right, the video game market research firm.
Right. And his prediction is pretty attention-grabbing.
Yeah.
He thinks Ubisoft is going to go private, then get broken up, and then all the valuable assets are going to be sold off.
Like, what do you mean when you say valuable assets?
Well, I mean, things like, Rainbow Six Siege and Assassin's Creed.
Okay, so we've got this big name in the industry making a bold claim, but why should we care? What makes Van Droynen's analysis so important?
Well, you got to consider that Rainbow Six Siege and Assassin's Creed, they're not just popular games. We're talking huge revenue generators here.
Yeah, makes sense.
So when a guy like Van Dreunen, with his deep understanding of the gaming market, suggests that these franchises might be more valuable than the entire company in its current state, well, it makes you think.
Yeah, for sure. So that brings up the question, why is Ubisoft in such a shaky position in the first place?
Right.
The Tweaktown article points to a bunch of issues. They've had a string of games that haven't really landed with players. There's been a lot of internal controversies and mismanagement, making headlines for all the wrong reasons, and there's a sense that their creative output just isn't what it used to be.
It's funny, though, because while these problems seem very specific to Ubisoft, they also kind of reflect bigger trends that are happening across the whole gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this pressure to make those blockbuster hits, the development costs are going through the roof, and there's this constant need for fresh content.
Right.
It's a tough world even for the giants.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But it seems like mismanagement is something Ubisoft is really struggling with.
Yeah.
Those controversies and the feeling that they're not listening to their players, that can't be good for investor confidence.
You're right. And the market is definitely reflecting that sentiment. Ubisoft's stock price has taken a nosedive.
How bad is it?
It's dropped from $28.19 to $12.30 year over year.
Ooh.
That's a big decline. And it really shows how investors feel about what's happening with the company.
Yeah, no kidding. And then you add the whole Tencent factor into the mix. It's like another layer of complexity.
Oh, absolutely. Tencent's already a big player in Ubisoft. They own 49.9% of Guillemot Bros.
That's the majority shareholder of Ubisoft. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is controlled by the Guillemot family. And on top of that, Tencent also has a direct stake in Ubisoft of about 9.9%.
Wow, they're really intertwined.
Very much so.
The Tweaktown article even says that Ubisoft might be thinking about going private.
Really?
Yeah, maybe as a way to protect themselves from a hostile takeover. It's like a real-life corporate thriller.
It really is. But the big question is, what is Tencent planning?
Right, what are their motives?
Could they be trying to become the majority owner of Ubisoft?
Mm.
I mean, it's definitely possible. And if that happens, it's going to have a huge impact on the gaming landscape.
Yeah, that's a game changer, for sure. And speaking of impact, we can't forget about the gamers themselves.
Oh, of course not.
This whole thing has sparked a massive reaction on Reddit.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whirlwind of opinions. Some people agree with Van Droynen's prediction, and others are holding on to hope that Ubisoft can make a comeback.
It's amazing to see the passion that comes out in these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
You could really feel how invested players are in these games.
Mm.
They're not just sitting back and watching. They really care about these franchises, and they're worried about what the future holds.
Yeah.
It matters to them.
It does. Some of the comments are brutal. Like one user said, good, their games are consistently dog shit. Every game now is just a reskinned AC2 or Far Cry 2 clone.
Ouch.
But then you've got others who seem heartbroken. I mean, one person wrote, make great games, sell great games, make money, rinse and repeat. Listen to the people who make the games. Let them chase their passion. Fuck the board members and the stockholders.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's clear that a lot of people feel like Ubisoft has lost its way.
Yeah.
Like they're putting profits ahead of quality and innovation.
It's interesting how the Reddit thread kind of reflects the two possible outcomes we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Either Ubisoft gets dismantled and its assets are sold off, or they somehow manage to reinvent themselves and recapture their former glory.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what would actually happen if Ubisoft gets dismantled, what would that look like for these beloved franchises?
That's a great question, and we'll dive into that in part 2.
So we were talking about what a dismantling would look like for those Ubisoft franchises.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to think about, you know.
It is.
Rainbow Six Siege, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, all potentially getting carved up and sold off to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
I mean, what even happens to these games when they're not under the Ubisoft umbrella anymore?
Well, there's no way to know for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess we can look at what's happened in the past when other companies have been broken up. Sometimes those assets end up doing really well under new ownership, but sometimes they just fade away. It all comes down to whoever takes over and what their vision is and what kind of resources they have.
It's crazy to think about, like, what if Microsoft ends up with Assassin's Creed?
Yeah.
And Sony grabs Rainbow Six Siege, and maybe Amazon decides they want Far Cry.
Right.
Is that a good thing for gamers, or is that something to be worried about?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? There's a chance it could actually lead to some really interesting stuff. Like imagine Microsoft taking Assassin's Creed and making it even more of an RPG.
Yeah.
You know, a massive world that could rival the Elder Scrolls. Or Sony could focus on the competitive side of Rainbow Six Siege and really push the boundaries of esports.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But there's also the other side of that coin. What if these companies just start trying to squeeze every last penny out of these franchises? You know, loading them up with microtransactions and loot boxes.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of future I want for gaming.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's a fear that a lot of people on Reddit are voicing too.
Yeah.
They don't want to see their favorite games turned into just cash grabs.
Yeah.
It really depends on who's in charge and what your priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
Are they focused on making great games or just making money?
That's a good question.
It's a question that the whole industry is dealing with right now.
Yeah, for sure.
This tension between making shareholders happy and creating amazing games.
Okay, so we talked about the potential downsides of dismantling, but is there a chance that it could actually be a good thing for some of these franchises?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, could a fresh start with a new owner revitalize them?
Sometimes a change is all it needs to get those creative juices flowing again. You know, a new owner might be willing to take risks that Ubisoft just wouldn't because they're too afraid or they've gotten complacent.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe we finally get that Splinter Cell reboot everyone's been asking for, or maybe they come out with something completely new that's not just another open world game.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the other path, the reinvention path.
Right.
What if Ubisoft actually manages to stay together and avoid getting dismantled?
Yeah.
Can they really turn things around and become a leader in the gaming world again?
It seems almost impossible.
It's a tall order for sure, but I don't think it's impossible. They'd have to completely change their strategy and really do some soul searching.
So what would that even look like? Like, how would they actually go about reinventing themselves? What steps would they need to take to win back the trust of gamers and investors?
Well, first, they got to fix all the internal problems that have been going on for years. They need to create a work environment where people feel respected and valued. They need to actually listen to their employees and get rid of any toxic behavior.
Because if they don't value their employees, then their games are going to suffer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about that. They also need to find that creative spark again. They need to take risks. They need to try new things, and they need to stop relying on those same old formulas and endless sequels.
It's like they need to have a big brainstorming session and just throw all the rules out the window.
Yes.
And just focus on making games that are fun and interesting and new.
Exactly. They got to remember what made them great in the first place.
Yeah.
Bold ideas,
Yeah.
memorable characters, and gameplay that actually feels innovative. It's time to stop chasing trends and start making games that people actually want to play.
And that means listening to what gamers are saying, right?
Absolutely.
Actually taking the feedback to heart and using it to make their games better.
That Reddit thread we talked about, that's a gold mine of feedback.
Yeah.
Even the negative stuff.
Yeah.
Ubisoft needs to understand why some players aren't enjoying their games anymore.
So it sounds like they need a total cultural overhaul. But is that even possible for a company as big as Ubisoft? Can they really change their ways?
That's the real challenge. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take time and effort, and the people in charge have to be truly committed to fixing things.
So they basically have to win back the hearts and minds of gamers one game at a time.
Pretty much. They need to show that they can still make games that are not only fun to play, but also memorable and meaningful.
Yeah, they got to rekindle that passion for gaming.
Exactly. And that passion needs to be reflected in the games they create.
So we've got these two possible paths, dismantling or reinvention.
Right.
both with their own risks and rewards.
And the future of Ubisoft and maybe even the whole gaming industry hangs in the balance.
This whole thing is about way more than just Ubisoft, isn't it? It really makes you think about some of the biggest challenges facing the entire gaming industry.
Yeah, you're right. It makes you question things like the pressure to make money for shareholders,
Yeah.
the expectations of gamers, and how to find that balance between making art and being commercially successful.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is.
But that's why we do these deep dives.
Right.
We want to explore these complicated issues and help you understand what's happening in the world of gaming.
Absolutely. And we want to know what you think, too.
Mm.
What do you think is going to happen to Ubisoft? Do you think they can turn things around?
Or are they headed for a breakup?
We've only just scratched the surface of this topic.
So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into what the future holds for Ubisoft and the gaming landscape as a whole. So we've talked about all the possibilities,
Yeah.
dismantling, reinvention. But let's step back for a second and think about what this means for the average gamer.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in all the corporate stuff, but at the end of the day, this is about the games we love.
So where does all of this leave the gamers? It feels like we don't have much control over what happens.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Remember that Reddit thread
Oh, yeah.
that shows the gamers have a voice and they're passionate about what they play?
Right.
That passion can make a difference.
So it's more than just complaining on Reddit.
Exactly. You got to put your money where your mouth is.
I like that.
Support the developers and studios who are making the games you want to see.
So vote with your wallet.
Exactly. If you're tired of microtransactions and lazy sequels, stop buying them. Check out different genres, support indie devs, and show the industry what you care about.
It really feels like we're at a turning point in gaming.
Yeah.
The big companies are facing some tough times, but there are also new opportunities popping up everywhere. It's an exciting time to be a gamer, even with all the uncertainty.
I agree. And as we've seen with Ubisoft, the future of these companies isn't just decided by executives.
Right.
It's shaped by the choices that gamers make every day.
Okay, so let's put you on the spot for a second.
Uh,
Imagine you're suddenly in charge of Ubisoft.
wow.
What would you do? Would you try to save the company,
Mm,
or would you sell everything off?
that's a tough one. There's no easy answer, and any decision would have a big impact.
Yeah.
But it's something worth thinking about because the choices made today are going to affect the games we play tomorrow.
Ubisoft's future might be uncertain.
Yeah.
But one thing is clear. The world of gaming is changing fast. New companies are coming in, technology is advancing at an incredible speed, and gamers are expecting more from the games they play.
And those companies that don't adapt and innovate and listen to their players,
Yeah.
well, they might get left behind as the industry moves forward.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
From expert predictions to passionate debates on Reddit.
We've talked about the challenges facing the gaming industry, the problems Ubisoft is dealing with, and the power that gamers have to shape the future of the games they love.
But we're just getting started.
Yeah.
We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Ubisoft's future? What games do you hope to see in the years to come?
Because ultimately, the future of gaming is in your hands.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.